Well, thank you for joining us tonight here in Malvern. We are going to spend a few minutes talking about the future of dining at Malvern. And I've got a couple of people with me to take us through that presentation. And at the end of that, there'll be a chance to ask some questions and we'll hopefully be able to answer everything that you've got to throw at us. So I'm going to hand over in a second to Sarah Angus. She's the Senior Deputy Head here and been working closely with me on our consultation process. And also Rob Breer, who is our COO, our Chief Operating Officer, who's been doing a lot of the work in terms of making sure that we've thought through all the logistics and the operations of any changes to catering. So if I may, I'm going to hand over to Sarah to talk us through some of her thoughts and give us some context.
Thank you very much, Keith. I've been here 15 years now, and unfortunately, a recurring theme has been concern about the food. We have had 3 different catering companies since I arrived, and knowing how important food is in a boarding school, we are determined to get this right. So we've been through an extensive consultation process, starting with internal stakeholders, the catering team, Housems and house staff. We've been very fortunate to consult with Parents Forum and also our pupils, as well as talking to external consultants as well. So that's the context behind our planning, and I'm now going to hand over to Rob to provide more detail.
Thank you very much, Sarah. As Sarah has just said, we've had really extensive consultation over the last 9 months, and that's been both internal with our staff, our pupils, and actually a representative group from the parent body, but also externally with quite a range of independent advisors. And one of the things that has come up is the idea that at the moment it's like trying to run 11 different hotels on one site, which you can imagine is inherently quite challenging. There are sort of 3 themes that have come out, and I just want to walk through each of those now. The first is just around making sure we are delivering better food to the pupils and doing so efficiently. And right now, that 11 house model is really restricting us on menu choices. We can't give people different options of hot meal, but also pasta dishes and so on. We can only really restrict ourselves to a simple salad bar and to a main meal. The second thing is around consistency. The UK at the moment is facing quite a challenge with recruitment in the hospitality sector. And it's a little bit like whack-a-mole in our different houses, where no sooner have we got a house team sorted out than we find that there's another vacancy that's opened up, and we're facing consistency challenges in delivering the quality of food. By moving to a different model, we look to address that and make sure that every day the pupils are getting fantastic food.
Sustainability, we have absolutely gone out and stated that we've got goals to improve our sustainability and our environmental friendliness over the long term, a goal of net zero by 2050. And at the moment, that 11 house model is resulting in an enormous amount of food waste and running 11 kitchens worth of equipment. And furthermore, unfortunately, the equipment in our kitchens is getting to the end of life, and that is a multi-million investment to replace, again, 11 kitchens. Now, at the moment, and we're certainly not driven by this as the primary factor, as I'll come on to, the primary factor we've been trying to attend to is around pastoral care. But we can't ignore the fact that we are facing the twin threats at the moment of food inflation, in particular, a 90% peak last year, which was a little horrifying, but also the challenge of VAT potentially coming up depending on the outcome of the elections. And so we are extremely cost conscious at the moment, and that directly goes into what we are and aren't able to do with annual fee increases around inflation and with how we manage VAT in the future. But the most important thing that came out of the consultation was recognising the strength of pastoral care at the college and how the catering plays a role in that. At the moment, there are only 5 independent schools that do the same model as us in the UK out of 1,100. Now, on the one hand, you might say that that's a point of differentiation for the college, and we're certainly aware of that. And there are many, many positives to dining together as a house. But on the other hand, the challenges with food consistency and with menu choice and with being able to provide specialist menus for different pupils could represent in its own right a welfare issue. And so the challenge we set ourselves is, how can we maintain the existing pastoral strength that comes from each house eating together, but look at a format that addresses those issues of choice and efficiency. And where we've got to is House in Hub. And what that would look like is having 3 hubs at the college. One hub would be in the House 7 and Ellerslie kitchen and dining room that we have now. And what would change is that House 9 would go to eat in House 7 and Ellerslie. The second hub would be based in House 8, and Schoolhouse would join House 8 for dining. And the third hub would be in the Griffin room, where houses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 would come together. Now, 2 key things here I'm going to come to in a second. Breakfast will continue to be in the houses. When speaking with my son, he was particularly passionate about not having to get up and go somewhere else, and was delighted to discover that breakfast would indeed be taking place in the house. The second thing is that, as I'm going to come to, lunch will be done in 2 sittings. And so what that means is that at no point will we be having all of the houses in together. At most, there would be 3 houses together, for example, in the Griffin room. So this is what that would look like. So at the moment, we are already doing weekend dining together, and that's actually worked really, really well for the pupils across Saturday and Sunday, and we expect to continue to do that going forward. During the week, though, what would happen is breakfast would take place in the current houses as usual. And I want to stress that the dining rooms that are in the houses today will continue to be there so that breakfast can take place and any other house assemblies, but also some of the house events that happen during the year, such as club supper and so on. So those dining rooms will continue to be there, and there will be dry options at breakfast like cereal toast, but also things like a hot option. It might be a bacon bun, or it might be a pain au chocolat, and obviously tea and coffee as well for breakfast. At lunchtime, there will be an hour slot broken into 2 30-minute sittings in dining. So what it means is that one house may dine first for 30 minutes and then go into their houses for registration, whilst another house might start with 30 minutes of registration and then go into dining room. When they do go into the dining room, they will be sitting in their houses. And I just bring you back to my previous slide about maintaining that pastoral welfare element of houses, retaining their cohesion and eating together. And they will be eating with a staff member and tutor on each table. So as I'll show you later, we're looking at tables of sort of 8 to 10, and there would always be a member of staff with each table to retain that social experience, but also ultimately learning experience during that period. There would also be registration in and out of lunch, as well as registration in the houses, so that we are keeping track of pupils and their dietary requirements. In the evenings, moving into supper, again, they would dine in their hubs, 6 to 7:30. But the difference here is it would be what we would call free flow, which is they'd go through and get their food and could come in and go out, depending on how they finished. And they would be able to go and sit within different houses and mix up between the houses. And this was actually one of the pieces of feedback from pupils, was that they liked the idea of having the chance to talk to friends and mix with friends from other houses during some of the meal times. So that will be possible at supper, whilst lunch will stay within each house. Sarah, is there anything that you'd like to add to that overview?
Just to say that we will retain CCF eating together and the different year groups. So occasionally the year groups have lunch together. So we will be able to retain that using this model. They'll just go to a different hub for lunch. So we'll still retain that flexibility. Thank you.
And I would also just like to sort of emphasize that when the pupils sit down for lunch together in that slot, they will be required to sit down together at a table and to be dismissed as a table. So we're not having this thing where they're coming in and going all the time. They will be retaining that mealtime social experience and the pastoral oversight that comes from sitting with staff.
Yeah, sorry, just to add as well that having the time in the house, we have said to staff that they can't use that time for additional maths clinic, for example, that tutors and the house staff will be able to have that guaranteed time with the pupils. And also it's good for the pupils to be able to get their bags ready, etc., for the afternoon. So we're retaining that hour lunchtime in order to have a bit of a break and be prepared for the afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Now, to be very clear, there are 3 sort of really important things we know we have to get right here. The first is we have to get that massive improvement in food and food choice. I'm going to come to that in a second. The second is that the serving experience has to be quick and efficient so that there's no queues and waiting. And the third is that the environments that they're sitting in, the Griffin Room, for example, has to be a fantastic dining experience in itself. And there are investments planned into each of the hubs to make sure that we get that best experience. And I'm going to show some early visuals of that in a second. What I'd like to do now is take you through those plans and visuals, but I would just ask that at the moment we are very aware the devil's in the detail, and the timings we are looking for this to go into effect would be from half term of the spring term 2025. We would be looking to do those investments in the hubs across the autumn term so that we could implement and start in spring. We're deliberately doing it halfway through the term so we can learn for half a term, make sure everything's working as we want it to, and then we can start the summer term with everything absolutely slick. But as I said, devil's in the detail. We are working through, the consultations continue. It may be that this starts from the summer term. These are the things that we're working through now. It also means that the visuals I'm going to show you now are a long way down the line, but we are still open to feedback and we are still working on those with the teams, with the staff and the pupils at the moment. So whilst there will of course be the House 8 and the 7 and Ellerslie hubs, I just want to focus for a minute on the Griffin Room because that's where we will have a sitting of 3 houses and then another sitting of 3 houses. Now, Keith, when I move my cursor, is that visible? Is that a yes or a no? No. Okay, but I'll just talk it through. So if we start from the entrance on the far left-hand side, the idea is that at the bottom of this slide is essentially the front wall of the Griffin Room that you would walk past. And both at the exit and entrance end, there are rooms for bag drop. So pupils can go straight from their lessons or wherever they are and do their bag drop before then going in by the sports centre into an existing entrance to start the experience. The first thing they will do is flow through an area with utensils that they will pick up before having the option to move down 2 different servery lanes. And the reason for deliberately doing 2 is to make that fast and efficient so that we've got no queues forming along the way. There will be various options available in those servery areas, and I'm going to come and show an example menu in a moment on a separate slide. There will also be catering staff who will be doing some of that serving. So some of the food options like pasta dishes or salads will be self-serve. Some of them, for example, a roast that requires carving would be done by a member of the catering staff. They will then go through to where you see that seating, and the green blocks that you see there are partitions so that we can create 3 separate areas for the different houses that are dining, and they will sit in their house block. And I will show you some visuals in a second. We are still working on little symbolic indicators that make sure you know you're in your house. It may be based on color. For example, house 2 is blue, that we use lighting or table lighting or some way of providing that visual indication. But the idea is to create that sense of a house in that block. Down at the far bottoms of the visual that I'm showing you now, there will be drink stations, so the opportunity to get water. And right at the top, when the pupils are finished, they'll return their used crockery and cutlery onto a system that will go back into the wash-up area that's off the chart that's in front of you. And when they're done, they'll exit at the opposite end of the Griffin Room before going to pick up their bags and returning either to the house or across into what's next on the timetable. In the top left of this image, you'll see some blue seating area. That's what we're calling the quiet room. There are a number of pupils that struggle to sit in a large group of people, and this will give us the chance to be able to offer that differentiated experience to those pupils. And again, there will be staff sitting with them in that room, which will become that quieter zone. That just gives you a sense of the flow through the Griffin Room. Now, just some early visuals to share you. So this first visual is as if you were entering, you've just collected your utensils. This gives you an idea of the servery area. Clearly, this is just a mock-up. There'll be an awful lot more food that will be on display and show, but it just gives you a sense of what that would look like before moving into those partitioned areas at the other end of the Griffin Room. And I'd hope you'd agree this is a fairly major intervention compared to the room that there is there today. It really will be a total overhaul of that space. Similarly, looking in the opposite direction from the other end of the room, this just gives you, again, a sense of the eating together. There might be a little bit of a space between some of the tables there that will create, but ultimately this provides a house-specific seating area. And you can see an example of a drink station there at the other end for juices and water as well. As I said, early renders, but we're actually quite excited about how that room could be transformed looking forward. Now, sorry, before I get onto the menu, this is just some examples that we've picked out from other schools that have gone through something similar and where our caterer has also already been putting this into practice. One of the things I think that really is critical in catering is making sure that that exec chef and director of catering roles have the best people in them. And we've just appointed a new executive chef who comes from a peer school that you'd all know once we are able to announce that, and who already have this hub dining in place. So that gives us the confidence that they know how to deliver that efficiently and effectively. And you can just see some examples here, but of the two-lane approach to the servery area, but also that chance to provide a much greater range of choice in food at the actual serveries. And to look at that in practice, I'm not expecting you to read every word on this menu during this presentation. I just more wanted to draw your attention to the very left-hand side, which is that as a result of moving to a hub, we would now be able to offer 2 different soup options, different main meal options, a pasta option, a baked potato option, and then for dessert, cold, hot, and yogurt pots and seasonal fresh fruits. That is a level of choice at an individual everyday level that we would never be able to do in 11 different kitchens across the college. It also allows us to get more experimental and provide more options from Monday through to Friday and week on week and month on month as well. And to do so with less waste and to do so to higher quality. So hopefully you agree that's quite an exciting change to the menus. Just to bring it to a close, just to recap why we're doing this. So I think we've talked about choice and consistency a lot. And obviously there is cost control, which whilst not particularly exciting, is something that we have to do to keep the fees under control. And we want to try and get that choice, consistency, quality, and cost control to work together. The last bit I just want to highlight, which is another aspect of why we're doing this, is around creating places and spaces in the college. We have a position at the moment where quite a number of our boarding beds are used by day pupils, and we want to be able to keep having both day pupils and boarders at the college. And one of the visions is that rather than spend an enormous multi-million amount of money building a new boarding house, what we'd rather do is more efficient use of existing space. And what we would do is those houses that would no longer require kitchens, that catering space would be converted into day study space. And those day studies would allow those day pupils to no longer need to use a bedroom and to free that up for boarders. And this is all part of creating scale and again, allowing us to control cost and fees in the future. Now, we took a bit of an example, House 1, where that catering space is not the most attractive and easy, as a bit of a challenge to ourselves as to whether we could make that look fantastic. And this is just some mock-ups of actual House 1 catering space and what that would look like if it was converted into day studies. And we were actually quite delighted with the results, and it's given us that reassurance that is definitely something we could do. This isn't something we do in one go. This is something that can be turned on over the years as we require the capacity. So we will be doing this as and when we need it, and we would pick different houses depending on our needs for boys and for girls. So that's it. I hope that wasn't too much of a rattle through, but hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour of what we are working on. And as I said, the devil is in the detail. We are very clear on the importance of execution on this and doing it really, really well, really getting the food, the service and the rooms right. And we will be working again with staff, with pupils and taking any feedback as we prepare for the spring term next year.
Thank you very much, Rob and Sarah. And I just wondered, Sarah, just before we go to a couple of questions from people, do you want to just talk to us who you've already told, how many of the pupils know, you talked about consultation earlier, just talk us through a little bit about some of the feedback, early feedback, some of the questions or concerns that people have raised earlier, because there's not, but we don't want to go through everything again, sure. But obviously people want to know what's been discussed, what's already happened.
Yes, of course. So we've spoken to all the prefects in the lower sixth. So that's the college prefects, the heads of houses, and the school council. And I've spoken to the FY and the remove, so because we've been talking about it in the last few weeks, it's been sort of quite constrained by exam groups and so on who's been available. We've discussed it, certainly the pupil feedback. They're very keen on breakfast in-house. That's without doubt. But it's the choice is hugely important for them, and they want to make sure that the food available is the same in the 3 hubs, which it absolutely is. So that's also important. The pupils have also asked about making sure they can keep things like the cup supper, the Christmas supper in-house, which we, as we said, we can do. So generally, I think they are. Obviously, the food's got to be really good. They are excited partly because the grub has been so successful, and it's the same company doing all the design work, and they've seen how some of them were a little bit skeptical about the grub, and now they've seen it, they're really impressed. So I think that's made it more exciting too.
Okay, good, thank you. And I know that Parents Forum sort of got a preview of some of this, and we were able to go into quite a lot of detail, just things that they really appreciated, things that the big thing about this is keeping all the best bits of the house dining without kiboshing our ability to do all the other bits really well.
Yeah, I mean, actually, sorry, just one thing to add is because pupils will still have their own kitchens in the house. So a lot of the pupils have got a little kitchen element to their common room, and that will stay. So it's not that bit that will be converted. It's the physical catering kitchen which would be converted, and the pupils aren't allowed to use that anyway because of health and safety requirements. So they'll still be able to make themselves a snack and to be able to bake muffins and so on. They could still be able to do that. They just won't be doing that in the they would never able to do that in the catering kitchen anyway. So that will still be the same. Okay,
good. Now I can see there's some questions coming in. So if I sort of some of these and then hand them out, if that's all right, Rob and Sarah. The first one just talks about those exceptions. What do we do about some of those pupils who are either they're not well in the house or they've come back late from something? How do we make sure that we combine, keep the best bits of that? Because in a house, obviously the house would just look after them. How do we make sure we get that bit right?
Yeah. So as we do with dining together at the moment, we can take food back to the house. So anybody who's ill we will be able to make sure that they eat. What will be actually better is for people coming back late for matches. At the moment, they often have something is saved for them after supper, and it might not necessarily, it might be been sitting around on a plate for a while and not be that attractive. Whereas now they will be able to get hot food in the hubs. So when they come back late, they'll definitely be able to get a hot meal. So I think that will actually be improved.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And there's another question here just about the keeping house spirit, and would there ever be a consideration of not having free flow or sitting wherever you like for dinner? I think that we sort of addressed that going forward, that some of the pupils did want that, but obviously with all these things, there's an element of review to this. Sarah, is this one for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the moment, supper is not. Supper tends to be quite fast. So pupils will come in with their friends, sit down, eat, and go. There's less formality for supper. So I think that will still happen. They'll still come in, sit down, etc. For those Monday to Friday meals. So I don't think it will make that much difference to that experience. It's just that they will be able to sit with their friends. We have been doing a bit of a trial of this in Severn and Ellerslie, and that has been popular. So I think, but of course we would keep reviewing it and having the flexibility to look. Yeah, we will be reviewing it, certainly.
And I think, Rob, you mentioned the aim is this isn't happening now. This is happening from February half term. And that half term is a relatively short half term to try all these things, to do reviews. Do you want to talk us just through about what are your thoughts at the moment about how we're going to do that review process then?
Yes, I mean, so the operations teams will still be beavering away through the Easter holidays. So, once we've got that in, we would definitely be going back to both staff and to pupils to get feedback on what is and isn't working, and then we'll look at it. And both the layout of the room are designed to be flexible so that we can move things, including the servery areas, around in that wider space if necessary. But also to the point about, free flow and which meals and how often in the week, these are discussions that can be had later on as well.
Yeah, good. Thank you. And I think you've already answered the question about the fact they can still do some baking in the houses, Sarah, depending on which one they are. And certainly they can still do some of the house events in there as well. A request to make sure we don't forget the present menu and making sure that we keep the variety and the consistency and the quality up. And certainly the feedback, I have brunch with each house each term, or groups from each house. And actually food hasn't come up recently. It's been one of the things that they really like. Although we have talked about some of these potential changes. So I think we've been making some good progress in some of those food areas, but point taken, as it always is, and thank you to all of you who filled in the parent survey recently, of which at points, possibly unsurprisingly, and hence why we're doing this, some of the issues were to do with the dining and some of the food as well. There was something else I just saw a moment ago. Just one of the things that, just going back to how we got here, one of the things that Rob mentioned was that lots of schools have moved away from house dining. I'm an ISI inspector, so I go around and see a lot of schools. And one of the things has been the ability to see schools that have done it really well and the schools that maybe haven't got it quite so good. And so one of the nice things we've been able to do, and we've sent off our director of catering, is off to have conversations with some of those schools that have kept that idea of house dining without losing that, even though they may have gone more in that hub lineup. And I think quite a few of these ideas have come from other schools. We've been able to take the best bits and learn from each of those. You mentioned that the start of the new system may be delayed to the summer. Any chance it could be expedited? Rob, I think there's probably quite a lot of logistical work that needs to go in, not least some of those designs. But I think it's a fair question. If it's a good idea, why aren't we getting on with it?
Sorry, go ahead, Sarah. Did you want to say something?
Just to say that the work starts October half term, and part of the trial process that we've been talking about is possibly trialing some things during the first half of that spring term. So I think we've built in massive contingency because obviously we've got to get food right. So I think there's some reasonable flexibility in there. But sorry, Rob, over to you.
No, I totally agree. And it is a mix of both operational delivery, in as much as we've also got an incredibly busy summer coming up with the new sixth form centre that's going to be constructed and various other changes around the site. And this is doing the hubs correctly. And whilst we may have looked at the visuals of the Griffin room, and I saw one of the questions later on, we are absolutely clear that the experience that is had in 7 Ellerslie and in House 8, the pupils must not feel like they are getting anything lesser, depending on which hub they are in. So those same pupil choices, meal choices and options will be available in each of the hubs going forward. And we need to make sure all the kitchens are, all the spaces are done. And that is going to take quite some time to get finalized. And then you're into the Christmas period, exams and various things. So that's why we've picked half term in the spring term, because it is just sort of the jigsaw puzzle of fitting everything together.
Good, thank you. And there's a question here about the flexibility of the Griffin room. Is it just becoming a permanent refectory? Maybe you want to talk about the flexibility that's being built in, Rob.
There is flexibility, so everything can be moved around and moved away, and obviously the big servery areas can only be moved to one side. But going forward, one of the pieces of thinking behind the Grub is that the Grub now does give us a fantastic hospitality space for the future. So it's not that we're losing our ability to host events and activities at the college. That can be done in the Grub too. We've got quite significant capacity in there, but we are able to move things around in the Griffin room should we wish to do something there as well.
Just on that, one of the things we've been doing, and I've talked about in various newsletters, is our master planning. And we feel that we're now in a position whereby we're just planning over the summer holidays to do another webinar at the start of next term where we can talk about the whole master plan, how it all fits in. And parts of that are the Grub we've talked about before, then this move to more hub-based dining, the memlib that comes up. But also we have planned the whole site out so that it works effectively, and we've got all of the flexibility built into some of those things too. Another question just about Ellerslie and Severn. Obviously, we're talking about the Griffin Room for some houses, but for other houses, it could be very similar, because if you're in Severn and Ellerslie, you're going to effectively stay in your own house with just 9 joining you. What's happening in Ellerslie and Severn? What's there now, and how does it change, Sarah?
Yeah, so Ellerslie and Severn have been Ellerslie and Severn have their own dining rooms. So they're next to each other, and they have a sort of servery in between the two of them. Currently, they've been trialing pupils can go and sit in either dining room, and then so what will happen is they will sit as a house. So they'll go back to sitting as a house, and then number 9 will come in and sit in either Ellerslie or Severn, because we'll rotate them round, so you're not always being the one that has to wait for the second sitting. So and then in the evening it'll be Ellerslie, 7 and 9, and they can collect their food and then go and sit in either dining room. So we don't need to do, all we're doing in Ellerslie and Severn is just making sure that the dining room looks really smart, so that the pupils feel that they're not missing out because they're not in the Griffin Room.
Well, thank you, Sarah and Rob. And I'm afraid I think we're out of time now, so we'll leave it there for now. But I'm sure if people have got more questions or suggestions, then we can follow up with those. Please do send anything in to Julie Desher. She's the headmaster's PA, and she will make sure she passes it on to the correct person, and we can get back to you. Thank you for everybody taking part, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.